Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing today? So, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you know that one of the subscribers on this channel is actually my mother. And she's a little shy. She doesn't usually leave comments in the videos. But of course, as her son, she sends me emails and says, hey, here's some questions for Saturday. Here's some things I'm thinking about. So, she is doing this so frequently. I am actually seriously thinking about creating a playlist called Mom's Questions. So, Mom, if you're watching this, keep the questions coming, and I might just create a playlist just for you. So, today's question, I'm going to boil down to kind of some digestible chunks. And she is talking about kind of try to paint us a vision of what you see kind of going forward into the future around unemployment, or perhaps better said, where do we get job creation? So I wanted to talk about that. Ultimately, it will ultimately impact interest rates and inflation at some point. That was kind of part two of her question. So let's talk about this. So, a couple of things. First and foremost, we're sitting at roughly 10% unemployment today. I think it was 10.1 as of the July reading just last week. You could see I think it's about 21 million folks on the unemployment realm. So let's call it that number. In order to get back to where we were at kind of 3.5%, we'd have to be down to 5 to 6 million folks. So really what my mom is asking is, where do we get the 14 million jobs? So I think there's a couple of things that we need to understand. I think first and foremost, there's at least a set of jobs that aren't coming back. Now, these were likely low-paying jobs. These were likely at employers who maybe were just scraping by, where maybe we were misallocating capital and it could have been used elsewhere. There's a set of jobs that is right on the cusp of coming back. So we need to admit that as we open up as the economy and the green shoots that we talk about this morning on the daily financial news. I think it's fair to say there's green shoots coming. And then there's in the middle. I think one of the things, if I was going to answer the question and my mom were just having a cup of coffee or a Diet Coke or whatever it is I think what we're going to go through for the next year or so is I think the country is going to adjust population centers, right? We were very dominant kind of big city. I believe that we will probably stay at least somewhat dominant big city, but I do believe that has lost some of its luster. I happen to sit in a camp that says, you know what? If we had, I don't know, pick a number, 3 million people in the big cities kind of commuting to work and then leaving. After this is all over, after the summer of 2021, which many companies are talking about, if we were at 3 million, we're probably going to be at 2.1, right? What I'm saying there is I don't see all of the employees coming back and kind of commuting in and then commuting out and commuting in and commuting out. So what I think that means is this work from home, this telecommuting, this virtual employee is here to stay, and I think is a trend we can count on. If that's true, what I believe is a side effect of that is I believe suburbs are underdeveloped. And I'm not just talking single family homes or apartments or multifamily. I believe what we are going to see is we are going to see some suburbs who were quiet little towns grow up and be small cities. If like, I guess the best example I could think of is maybe Lake Tahoe, right? Lake Tahoe, Nevada side offers the taxes of Nevada, kind of that lake life living. For example, or maybe it's Truckee, kind of up on the way there. I could see where these very cute outdoorsy towns today really have a migration in. Current values go up, which we're seeing, but I believe what we will see is infrastructure built around it. I don't know this for sure, but there's plenty of places that probably don't have movie theaters or bowling alleys or those extra things that make the suburbs just this kind of quaint little town. So I think what's going to happen over the next year or so is we are going to see major development in lots of little suburbs. And that is an employment boom, right? We are going to see lots of capital, lots of jobs go to develop not only more housing and apartments, but just those things that once small towns, now small cities need. And I think that's going to happen at hundreds of locations. So I think that is going to be a big employment boom. And again, a change that's accelerated because of this health crisis. And I don't think we're seeing that now. I think we're still kind of retreating. But I do think this leave the big city, go to the suburbs is here to stay. And if it is here to stay, we're going to see development. We're going to see entrepreneurs, risk capital come in and develop commercial space. That's what I think is coming. The other thing that I do believe is coming, and we saw a sample of it in the Kodak kind of loan, which now is on hold, but the idea holds, is I believe we are going to start declaring what must be or what should be made in America. I think we've had enough of being dependent on foreign companies that don't like us very much. So that is what I think is going to happen. So I think we are going to bring home the supply chain, not for everything, don't get me wrong. I don't see us making sneakers or clothing or things of that nature. But when we think about personal protection gear, when we think about pharmaceutical drugs, right, these things that probably many of us were shocked were made overseas, I really think that's going to come home. I do believe the kind of made in America kind of quality control and all of that makes it make sense. So I see that being positive for our future and an employment boost. Manufacturing stuff in America will be a manufacturing boost, an employment boost. And then I see, $1 trillion infrastructure bill coming next year, year after, regardless of who's president. I think it is goes without saying that our national infrastructure is maybe not quite a disgrace, but it's sort of heading in that direction. If we were to come up with a way to really deploy that across the country, that would be a huge employment boost. And if you tie that in with the towns and becoming small cities, I think we've got years of goodness ahead of us and employment growth ahead of us. We've got to get through this crisis. We've got to be around people again, all of that. So I think that is coming. So I am fairly positive on job growth. I do believe most of that will happen next year once we get a vaccine, once we get a treatment where we take death off the table. I think things get good. So I see things getting really good in 2021, 2022. But to part B of my mother's question, which again, I think we should create a mom's playlist. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes, is what happens to inflation and then ultimately interest rates. So first off, I think inflation is already picking up. You can already see inflation in the grocery store. So I think it's there. It's kind of like lurking. But when you do the basket of goods and you throw in the depreciation from clothing and things of that nature, it kind of feels muted. But I do believe the stuff that you and I pay for every day, there is inflation there. I believe inflation in oil and gas is just on the cusp as we kind of flex our muscle and start driving more. So I think inflation is real. I do believe the Fed mandate of 2% is real. I believe inflation will be here sooner than most expect. Sooner meaning hitting 2% inside 36 months instead of 60 months, as I've heard some people say. Because if you just have all this capital, you have now risk capital coming in next year with these construction projects, if we do kind of build the suburbs to small cities, it's just going to be more competition for lumber and cement and steel and Caterpillar gear and employees, right? That's one of the things that builders talk about is they can't find it, roofers and painters and framers and all of those things. So I think inflation is there today, and I think inflation goes up. And then lastly, interest rates. I firmly believe if you can get a 30-year mortgage today under 3%, you should. If I see inflation ticking up over 2% in 3 years, I can tell you interest rates will be right there with it. We won't have a 2.5% 30-year and a 2% interest rate, or inflation, excuse me. That just won't happen. Interest rates will go up. And that will be a governor on real estate values, because again, people kind of put out on payments, right? The mortgage payment versus price, really. So in the end, Mom, I think I'm net positive on employment growth. We've got a little bit more ahead of us as we open up and we get more comfortable. The big employment boom comes post-vaccine, post-treatment. We've got to take death, or at least the fear of death, off the table. That will get people around and less, staying at home, if you will. We have to see if the leaving from the city is real, because I could be wrong. If people leave the city and then come flying back, we lose that kind of employment. But it does feel real today. We certainly have to have an infrastructure bill, regardless of who our next president is. I think both sides are talking about that. And then all of that kind of leads to inflation and higher interest rates. So, Mom, thank you for everything you've done. Keep the questions coming. I'm sure the channel will appreciate your playlist. I'm going to stop this video now and go create that playlist and call it Mom's Playlist. All right, everybody, take care. Thanks for listening.